Colossians 1:13 through 20. He has delivered us from the power of darkness and conveyed us into the kingdom of the Son of his love, in whom we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins.
He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by him all things were created that are in heaven and that are on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things consist.
And he is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he may have the preeminence. For it pleased the Father that in him all the fullness should dwell, and by him to reconcile all things to himself, by him, whether things on earth or things in heaven, having made peace through the blood of his cross.
Slain
And it is by your divine plan that we are all in this room together. And I pray that you'll just have your hand over everyone in this room. I pray that you'll open our hearts to what Jordan has to say. And I pray that you'll just fill our hearts. In your name we pray. Amen.
You guys! Oh man, this is awesome. So I almost didn't turn my mic on, and I also ran into the door on the way in and almost broke my mic, so we're just really off to a great start. Is what I gotta say. How you guys doing? Yeah, I love the energy. This is so fun. You know, I'm not the most fancy person, kind of klutzy, kind of awkward, so I just figured maybe it'd be good if tonight was just fun. Yeah? Okay, so before we even dive in, when I was told about this event, my manager sent me this email. And she said, hey, there's this event in a tiny town in Ohio, and it's called Spark. And I said, oh, cool, what's that about? She said, well, it's about igniting women to just step into their gifting, their passion, and their God-given purpose. I was like, let's do it. That's awesome. So you think we could do that tonight? All right, so before we even get started, I want to ask you a question, and I want you to be real honest with me. Raise your hands if you have no idea what you want to do with your life. Raise your hand if, no, you keep it up, we're going to be real honest here, okay? Embrace the reality, okay? Raise your hand if you're not quite sure what your purpose or your dream even is. Have you ever been told, have God-sized dreams, or have a dream, and you're like, I haven't figured out dreams, but okay, right? Or have you ever felt like, man, everyone else seems to have their next step figured out, and I don't even know what I'm going to do after graduation. Okay, so can we all relate that sometimes we just feel like, what am I doing with my life? Right? So I have been in that place so much, and I think that's something we don't really talk about a lot. I think we hear a lot of the words like purpose and passion and mission and da-da-da. I feel like that's thrown around, and it's for all good reason, but I think we can kind of feel like, what do I do when I don't quite know what that's supposed to look like? Or when my sister over here has got this perfect dream, she's like, well, I want to rescue the world, and this is exactly how I'm going to do it. And you're like, I have a cat and I put pants on today, right? So I think I want to speak to you guys. I want to speak to the girls in this room that are like, I kind of have a clue. I know I have purpose, but I just kind of have some unfigured out dreams. And I just really don't know what I want to do next. And I want to tell y'all a story. Does anyone know that I have a podcast? Well, okay. Well, we've got the whole listener crew in here. Well, if you've listened into it's a very new podcast, so you might have heard a little bit of my story. Did anyone listen to the imposter syndrome episode? Okay, so I'm going to regurgitate that story a little bit, but we're going to go a little bit different directions. So don't be like, oh, I heard this, okay? But for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to tell you the story. Who in here is a junior? Okay, so we've got a lot of juniors in here. So junior year is this kind of funky time where you're kind of getting to that place where you kind of have to be a grown-up, but you're not quite to that place where you're about to graduate, so you just start thinking what's next? What am I going to be doing? And I remember my junior year, I went to an interview right around this time. It was towards the end of the first semester, beginning of the second semester, and I went to this fancy interview, and I had to wear this fancy outfit, and I had to go be impressive, and it was this big corporate thing because I studied healthcare administration. And I thought, I'm going to go work in insurance or do some sort of corporate job like that. So I go to this interview and felt so stiff, so discouraged, because I thought, this isn't really what gives me life. This doesn't feel like this is what I really want to do, but I guess it's kind of what I'm supposed to do because that's what my degree says. And so I was a little bit disheartened by the whole thing, and I didn't really know what to do. And my mom came to visit me at college a few weeks later. And I filled her in and I said, I went to this internship, it went really great, but I don't know, it's giving me unrest, and I'm feeling this, I don't know what I should do about it. I don't know if I should take it, I don't know if I should pursue this in my life. That crisis moment that happens your junior year where you're like, am I studying the wrong thing, right? And my life is gonna end, and what's next? So I kind of was having one of those moments, and she looks at me when I told her, I don't know if I want to do this, and she goes, so don't. And I'm like, don't? And she goes, yeah, just try stuff. I'm like, that's the worst mom advice ever, okay? Like, what's that mean? I'm like, can you give me a clearer plan, please? And she goes, no, Jay, really, I mean, you're so academic, you've worked so hard at school, you've, been a faithful student, you've been faithful, like, you've done so many great things, but I think you've put so much pressure on yourself to follow the status quo, and you've been living into expectations of what you perceive is expected of you. And you really haven't allowed yourself to explore some of your passions and your gifts. And I was like, oh yeah, you're kind of right. So then I thought, well, I haven't explored anything, so that's just what do you even do, right? I mean, I often say, I think that sometimes the greatest barrier to purpose is not a lack of opportunities, but an endless list of options. We live in this world, it's like, do this, try that, you can do this, you can do this, and you can see what everyone else is doing, and then your advisor hands you a list of 257 million options, and you're like, holy cow, I don't know what I want to do with my life, right? I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my life. What's my calling? What's my purpose? All these words, and it just kind of jumbles. And so then she gives me this permission to try stuff, and I'm going, okay. So my grand plan was I was going to start a scrapbooking business. Yo, I had never scrapbooked in my life, okay? I don't know why I thought that was, I didn't even like it. So that was my first thought, and then I was like, scratch that. I don't really know how to cut up pictures. I'm not that fancy. So plan B. So plan B was I'll be a model. Not like a Victoria's Secret model, let's not get crazy. But I was like, well, maybe I'll be on commercials. Okay, maybe I could go model for Nike, or, that was a big aspiration, let's be real, I was probably gonna model for like the local newspaper, but I went to I live in Indianapolis, and so, I was in a college town about an hour south of Indianapolis, and I went to the local model call, and there were so many different age groups and demographics and people there for different types of advertisements. And so, I smiled for the pictures, I did the thing, and they said, well, thank you for coming, we'll get back to you in a week. And I was like, I got this, my hair looks good, I had my lipstick on, like, this is a shoe-in. They emailed me a week later, they're like, yeah, you're not quite what we're looking for. And I remember I was just like, I failed at life. I'm not gonna go work in insurance, and I can't be a model, and the scrapbooking thing isn't gonna work out, like, what's next, So, anyways, that kind of led to this whole journey of just trying different things and getting creative. And right around that time, right around my sophomore, junior year, I was really in a season of growing in my faith, and I had never really studied scripture before, so I was hand lettering and doodling verses that I wanted to remember, and quotes that stood out to me or that challenged me. And it was just my own little way of remembering things that I didn't want to forget, because if you take time to write something down, you're much more likely to remember it, right? Would you agree? And then if you take time to write it and make it look pretty, you're 10 times more likely to remember it. So I started doing that, and I also just started dating my husband. And he was a football player. So he was a full-time student, full-time athlete. That's a lot. And he picked up guitar. He started teaching himself guitar because he said, I needed a creative outlet. I needed something that wasn't school or football. And so when I was doing all this hand lettering, he said, this is a really good creative outlet for you. You are Dean's List, you're in 18 credit hours, you're doing so many different things, you're leading youth groups, like, this is really good for you to do. Maybe, being a guy and not really knowing what he was saying, he says, maybe you should start an Etsy store. And I said, oh, I don't really know what Etsy is, but okay. So I went and looked it up. Does anyone know what Etsy is? Everyone knows what Etsy is now, but at the time it was like new, okay? So Etsy was like, it wasn't nearly what it is now. And so I'm like, all right, well, I'll try this. So I had this great plan that I would doodle on a piece of paper with Sharpie marker, and then I would take a picture of it and put it on Etsy. Because I had like $4 in my bank account, so I couldn't go get a bunch of fancy things. And I don't know why I thought someone would buy that, to be honest, but I took it downstairs, because I lived in a sorority house at the time, and I took it downstairs to our little dungeon of a storage closet. And I put it up against a wall, and I basically took a picture of it on my non-smartphone, okay? And then I figured out how to get that onto the computer and then upload that to Etsy. And I'm thinking, what am I doing? Who's gonna buy this? Well, after a few days, I think I wrote like, be still, or something very simple. And the only reason that I think someone bought it is because I do have a little knack for handwriting. I won the handwriting contest in 3rd grade, so, it was a very natural transition, okay? And so I put it up online, and a few days passed, and I'm sitting there at my desk working on homework, and all of a sudden I get this notification. It says, ding! And then this woman in Texas bought my little piece of paper. And I was like, oh, I made I paid $8, this is amazing. And then I had this realization, oh, I gotta figure out how to ship this, okay? Because I didn't have that plan, like I hadn't thought that far ahead, I just started the Etsy account. So then I went to the post office and I asked the lady how to ship it, and I didn't really think through the fact that I probably shouldn't put the sorority address as the return address because now I'm putting 100 girls in danger, but it didn't occur to me at the time. So I ship it to her. I think I wrote on it like, "Dear Denise, thanks for your order." You know, it's like not professional at all, but very personal, and I'm sure she loved it. So this goes on, and this shop slowly begins to happen. So it's like, maybe if I take that $8 and I go to Hobby Lobby and I get like a ceramic mug, I could take a Sharpie or like a gel pen thing and write on a mug. So then that's what I did. And this kind of started to create this little shop. Very makeshift, but very fun. And it got to the point where I was like, getting more and more orders. I decided that was right around when social media was becoming a little bit of a thing where people would use it for their businesses and stuff. And I said, maybe I'll upload this on this thing called Instagram. Okay, cool. So then that started to grow because algorithms and all the things weren't a thing at the time, and people would share it with their friends. So then before I knew it, I was getting like 80 orders a week and trying to go to school and trying to do life. And so I started recruiting my roommates to help me, and I was still hand painting all of these things. And at one point, I had an order from a woman in Alaska, and she asked me to make 100 mugs. So I shipped 100 mugs to Alaska. And I get an email about a week later, and she's like, "Hey, half the marker has rubbed off, and like 5 of these have been broken." And I'm like, I don't know how to ship mugs to Alaska. No, like there's not a guide for that. I don't know how to do that. So I'm trying to answer this customer service email from biology class, okay? And feeling like such a fraud, I'm going, what am I doing with my life? But this thing continues, and it continues. And so I start recruiting my roommates to help me because I'm like, I can't ship all this by myself, and I don't know if I should be doing this, but it's kind of fun. So that led to a lot of conversation on the floor. On a really cold floor over like goldfish, and I would pay them in pizza and Chipotle bowls because what more could you want when you're in college? And we'd sit there for hours, and we would package these things, and we would get to talking, and we'd be sharing our struggles, and they would open up to me, and we would pray over each other, and we would like what we're struggling with, and it was this really just open, organic place in our sorority house. There was 150 girls in this house, but 5 of us were up in the little stinky little storage closet, wrapping up mugs to send to Germany and all these other places. I figured out how to digitize, my prints and get them actually made, and it slowly evolved. But alongside of that, I really grew this awesome community. And I grew this space where I was learning a lot, and I was realizing, I'm not the only one who feels like that. I'm not the only one who feels like I got rejected, or whatever it was. And so I started sharing those stories alongside whatever I would share about my shop online. And very quickly, that shop began to grow more and more and more, and then suddenly, I was getting opportunities to speak and being asked to write because I was writing alongside this little shop just because. And I'm like, I don't think I want to do that. I just like to doodle on my mugs, okay? And so it took me some time to get into that. Well, all of that, the reason I share that story is because I want you guys to get something. That was not 30 years ago. That was 4.5 years ago that started, and that led to me now standing here and getting to speak to college girls all over the country, having a book published in the next 4 months. I mean, things that I would have never, I have a healthcare administration degree, okay? I don't have a speaking degree or a Bible degree or a business degree, not that fancy. I went to Indiana University, we didn't have stuff like that, okay? So the reason I'm telling you that is because that never would have happened, and we wouldn't be hanging out right now if Mom wouldn't have looked at me and given me permission and said, just try stuff. Because here's the thing, and this is what I want to talk about tonight. I think there are a lot of reasons. I think there are a lot of dumb reasons, but very legitimate reasons, that you and I don't allow ourselves to step into our destiny. To try things, to get outside of our comfort zone, to wiggle and shake and move and kind of disrupt the status quo a little bit and stop living into perceived expectations. I think that we can think we're living in freedom, but what we're really doing is we're living into what we think everybody else wants us to do. I thought, I have to have this internship, and then I have to do this step and that step. And if I would have just said that without even trying to get outside the box a little bit, I wouldn't do nearly what I've been given the privilege and the gift to be doing now. So tonight I want to talk about 5 reasons we don't allow ourselves to, as my mom puts it, just try stuff. And I'm thinking it might challenge you a little bit. So the first reason is this. I think we want a perfect plan to execute before we experiment, because we allow ourselves to be confined by the pressure to live up to a certain label. Here's what I mean. It's getting close to Thanksgiving. I'm sure you're probably going home for Thanksgiving or for Christmas. And maybe some of you have great Aunt Beatrice, and she's always asking, so what's your plan? What do you do? You know? Or maybe since you haven't graduated yet, it's not quite as relevant, but trust me, the second you graduate, you know what questions you get? So tell me about your job. When are you having kids? Have you met a nice guy yet? You get these questions, and they're good meaning, but they put this pressure on us, and would you agree that you probably want to have a quick, easy answer for that? Oh, I'm a teacher. Oh, I'm a worship leader. Oh, I'm a photographer. We want like a quick, like that's something people can understand. That's something that you don't have to explain. It's usually given some credibility. Would you agree? But then what happens when you're like, well, I'm doing this right now. I'm a student, or I'm, doing photography right now, but there's also some other things I'm exploring. But I don't quite know how to put it into an elevator pitch for you, great Aunt Beatrice. And so then suddenly she wonders if you need help figuring out your life. Right? And she's like, oh honey, I have some contacts out in California. I can get you the help you need. You're like, oh, really? I'm fine, And so I want to know, have y'all ever felt that pressure? Maybe it's not from great Aunt Beatrice, but maybe it's from a friend, or from a teacher, or from yourself. This expectation to live into a label and to have a very clear, little answer that's tied up with a bow and easy for everyone to comprehend. You ever felt that pressure? Yeah? Okay, and that's exactly where I was at. And so I want to talk through what is the solution to that. Because we can all identify it's a problem, but then what? So as I started thinking about this, I realized, well, I think the first thing was my mom actually helped me create a mindset shift. She helped me shift how I looked at my own life and the type of pressure I put on myself. And I actually got to this place where I realized, I don't even really understand why or what I'm doing, shipping all these mugs when I have 18 credit hours to take care of, and I should probably be figuring out my next step after college. But this is where I'm at right now. And when mom never ever questioned that, when she cheered me on, she said, what, I'm gonna give you permission to try. And I'm gonna give you permission to fail instead of failing to try. Because I think sometimes we fail to try instead of, well, that's gonna be hard to say. Let me say this so that it makes sense. I think sometimes we fail to try because we fear failure, but I would rather try and fail. Does that make sense? If you fail to try instead of try and then fail, you haven't learned anything. And so the first mindset shift that we have to get to is that people don't always have to understand. You are not living for people. You are not made for people's approval. Not even great Aunt Beatrice, as nice as she might be, right? I'm sorry if there's great Aunt Beatrice in here. I really don't mean to that's just my name. But the first thing is we have to get to the point where we're like, what? I have to be okay with the fact that not everyone's going to understand the season of life I'm in, or what maybe God put on my heart, or this dream that I'm pursuing, or this idea I have, even if it doesn't end up being my lifelong thing. Even if I'm just trying stuff. Second thing is I want you to write this down. And I want you to stick it on your forehead so that it sticks in your brain and you see it in the mirror. Give yourself permission to explore and experiment before you have a perfect plan. Because you don't have to have a perfect plan. God has a perfect plan. You just get to step into it and walk in it. I think sometimes we forget that whatever you're going to do next year has been known since the beginning of time. That takes so much pressure off. You just get to live into it and try things and fail at things and keep going. So I want you to give yourself permission to explore and experiment before you have a perfect plan to execute. The last mindset shift for this reason we don't allow ourselves to explore and to get outside of our comfort zones is because we need to start looking at everything we do as practice, not as a performance. I used to hate speaking because I felt like this is my moment, this is my time to shine. I gotta no, y'all, I mess this up so much. More times than I actually do it well. But when I said, but maybe if I start looking at it like practice, because practice equals progress, which equals not perfection, but permanence. You got to start looking at the things that you're trying and the things that you're doing, whether that's serving or creating or photography or math, I don't care what it is, even your biggest tests. Stop looking looking at them as a thing that measures your performance and therefore your worth, and start looking at it as practice for living into who you were already made to be. The second reason we don't allow ourselves to get outside of our comfort zones and really step into our God-given abilities and try things and fail away in the process is because we believe embarrassment is the end of us. You ever felt like that? Does embarrassment freak you out? Does rejection freak you out? You know why embarrassment freaks you out? Because it's a perceived rejection. I'm going to tell you a story. I love stories. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a story. That shop that I started in college, it eventually turned into more opportunities. Like I said, I started writing alongside what I was doing just because. And out of the blue one day, I got an email from a literary agent in New York City, fancy schmancy lady, and she's like, hey, I think you can write a book. I'm like, wait, you mean like a book that people read? She's like, yeah. I'm like, I've written like 8 Instagram captions. What are you talking about, lady? So of course I get on the phone, I'm like, yeah, I'd love to write a book. That sounds really cool, you know, and I just like play it off as if I have my life together. And I'm 21 walking through campus. Anyways, so this starts to lead to these other things of speaking, and I got an opportunity to speak, and it went absolutely horribly. And then I got another opportunity, and slowly I started refining this thing. Well, one time, it was probably like the third or fourth time that I had spoken ever. Anyone know who Bethel Music is? Anyone know who Christina Marco is? Tell me how this makes sense. I had spoken 3 times and they asked me to be the keynote speaker for an event with Christina Marco. That doesn't make sense, right? It's like, that doesn't add up. You don't really know what you're doing, and she does. And so, I'm like, yeah, I can totally do that. No problem. Like, not a big deal. So I go to this event in Oklahoma, and the instructions were so simple. I was supposed to go out, do my talk, and at the time, this is how I talked. I was like, so, you know, I'm basically just reading to everyone, which is fine, but I was sitting there so nervous, and I finally got through my talk, and then I exited stage right, got through it, but what was supposed to happen is the band was going to come back out, and they were going to do a 6-song set. At the end of the 6 songs, they asked me to just come back out and like kind of close the night, right? Give a little send-off, like a little bump in the road, like, go. And I don't know how motivating I was when I was standing there like, and peace be with you. But anyways, and so I said, sure, we got this. So I get through my little talk, the band comes out, Christine's rocking it, she's doing her thing, and I'm sitting there on the side of the stage, and there's a drummer. I wish I could act this out for you, but basically, anybody ever seen a drummer how they do this thing with their head? Yeah? Thing with their head. And I'm over here on stage right, and I see the drummer, and it's towards the end, like they've been singing a while. And so I look at, and it's kind of like the song ends. And you know Bethel's songs are like 18 minutes long, right? So I'm like, that's gotta be 6 songs. And I see the drummer look at me, and he's like doing this. I'm like, great, that's my cue, because I thought he had it. So I walk out, and I start speaking, and I'm like reading something, and Christina's standing here, apparently probably like this. And I'm over here just completely oblivious. The guy hadn't shut my mic off because they were only done with song 5. So I have this big realization as the whole audience is staring at me like this, and Christina's standing here, and I go, I almost walked off the stage and killed myself. And so, that would have been another story for another time, but we saved that one. So, anyways, so I embarrassed myself completely in front of like 1,000 women, way more sophisticated than me, and I get up, I'm literally backstage, having a panic attack, like, oh my gosh, and I wanted to go crawl in a hole, live in a cave with some trail mix, and never come back. Okay? I was like, give me some trail mix, I'll be good. And I didn't know, but here's the thing, I still had to go back out there. I wasn't like done. I still had to go back and face my doom, and I'm like, oh dear. So they back up, and here comes, and I had this like about 5, you know what? Actually, this really sucks right now, actually. Yeah. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that word on stage, sorry. But it was really like, it was so humiliating. And I had this realization, you know what though? I bet everyone in that audience isn't thinking about it as much as I am. And I'm probably the only one reading into it this much. And then I had this realization, you know, my worst case scenario, the reason I was so nervous and so paralyzed is because I was so afraid of embarrassment. Embarrassment was my worst case scenario. Well, guess what? My worst nightmare just came true. And I'm standing there backstage going, yeah, that just happened, but I didn't die. I'm still here. And I got a job to do. So you know what I had to do? I did a little Taylor Swift shake it off moment, okay? And I had to get back on stage. And I went out there and I don't even really remember what I said. But I proved to myself that the way that you get over your greatest fear is not by going around it and avoiding it and, avoiding it at all costs. It's by going through it. You ever seen Finding Nemo? Do you guys like my references? This is so dumb. I don't know why I'm going here, but Finding Nemo. Remember when Marlin and Dory are looking for Nemo and they're swimming the Great Blue Sea? I think this is breaking. They get to this place where they ask for directions, and these fish tell them, hey, when you get to the trench, you've got to go through it, you can't go around it, or over it, right? So I got it, through it, not over it. Well, then they get to the big scary trench, and what do they do? They swam up. They were like, yeah, no, I'm not going through that dark, scary thing, I'm going to go over it. What happened when they went over it? What? Jellyfish. Y'all, last time I told this story, no one knew. I'm like, what is wrong with America? Like, we don't do Pixar? So, glad y'all knew that one. Cedarville's on it. But, so yeah, they go and they get stung by jellyfish. It was actually more dangerous, right? And so, I started thinking about this. Had they just gone through it, that wouldn't have happened. But we live in this culture and this place where it's like, I'm over it. I can't adult today. Yes, you can adult today. And yes, you can go through the hard, just spit. Then you can go through the hard thing. Like I said, not that fancy. But you can go through the hard thing. Because what happens when you believe the lie that it'll be easier to just hop, skip, and jump over it is you get stung. And you don't actually conquer the fear of getting outside your comfort zone. So I was, go back on stage, do my thing, get over it, whatever. But I realized, fear. You know what fear stands for? You have any idea? Have you ever heard that? Fear is forget everything and run. And that's what I wanted to do in that moment. That's what I would like to do when I'm about to face what feels like a possible rejection or a perceived embarrassment. But the solution, especially after having to go through that and go back out and face it, you know what happened at the end of that event? This little girl came out to me, she was probably like 15 years old, and she comes up to me and she goes, thank you for being awkward. I was like, you're welcome, bye. She's like, yeah, it made me feel more human. I'm like, good, we're all human. But it just made me realize, there's actually some sort of empowerment and embarrassment. And I had to realize I have to look at embarrassment differently. So the solution to the second problem is that you have to approach embarrassment or perceived rejection completely differently. Embarrassment is not the end of the road. It's not where your purpose cuts off or your destiny stops. Embarrassment is not the end of the road. Embarrassment is the end of my ego. Embarrassment is the end of my ego. And you know what's interesting about that? When I get to the end of my ego, that is the beginning of freedom. Embarrassment is actually like this sneaky little invisible form of empowerment. Embarrassment can be a form of empowerment. If you can start looking at it that way, you won't be so afraid and feel like you need to go over it or around it or avoid it. You can go through it and come out a stronger version of you walking in line with your destiny. Second thing, stop trying to control the outcome and start confronting the opportunities that scare you most. Start embracing the embarrassments along the way. They are there for a reason. A little humble pie served me well in the long run. Because I realized, God taught me that day, you know what? Awesome things can come out of your awkwardness. Awesome things can come out of your awkwardness because it ain't about you, sister. It's just not. And when we get to that place, there's a sense of freedom and empowerment there. Third thing, I want you to consider what scares you most. What are you most embarrassed of? Like maybe you are wanting to try something. Or maybe you have this thing in your mind, you're like, man, if that happened, that would be the most embarrassing thing, and I hope that never happens to me. I want you to do this exercise with me. I want you to think about what that would be for you. And if you're not sure, write down this assignment and do it later. But But I want you to think about that would be for you, and then I want you to picture what would happen if you experienced that embarrassment. If it came to pass, if your underwear were on your head and everyone saw it, okay? Whatever that thing is that you're like, that would be humiliating. What if you went through it and came out on the other side of it? What might you learn and who might you be? Because when I went through it and got on the other side of it, I was like, I'm not dead. And now I'm not actually as scared of that as I thought, and I was so much more confident going back out on stage that next time. What is it for you? And I want you to picture what your life would look like if you walked through it and came out on the other side. Third reason we don't get outside of our comfort zones and really ignite our God-given purpose and passion and destiny is because we think, I don't have time. Distraction is the enemy of purposeful action. The word action is in the word distraction. You know that, right? When my mom said just try stuff, I did not think I had time. I'm like, lady, I am in 18 credit hours and I have friends, okay? I got a life. Like, I don't know what you mean by just try stuff, but the thing about it is we often will believe I don't have time because, and as a result of that, we don't give ourselves permission to play. I think we're supposed to have childlike faith, right? But I think we feel this pressure to be this, like, fancy adult. Y'all are like 21. Please be mature and responsible, but also give yourself permission to play a little. Give yourself permission to try things that interest you, that are fun. We nearly punish ourselves with so many obligations and responsibilities and things that we say yes to and commitments that are not ours to take on. Sister, you have to realize that your yes to something is no to something else. And I think what can happen is we try to say yes to everything. But I truly believe that giving the right no is better than giving a bunch of wrong yeses. And I think there's a lot of us in this room that know I've given some wrong yeses because I wanted to live into someone else's expectation of me. I didn't want to let somebody down. I want to seem impressive, like I can carry the world. Sister, you are not Jesus. Get that through your head. Like, I have to tell myself that you are not the savior of the world. Show up and be awkward and just love people. Right? And so I want you to think about maybe you've taken on some commitments or some responsibilities that really aren't yours to take on. And this isn't a free pass to neglect responsibilities. That's not what I'm saying here. That would be dumb. But it is a challenge to really start letting yourself have more fun with some passion projects. Regardless of whether or not they become a business, or whether or not they lead to something huge, they can still inform what God's trying to teach you in your destiny. Amen? And so, when I started to shop, I'm involved in all these extracurriculars, and I was doing all these things, and I said, I don't have time. Do you think you don't have time? Do you ever feel like I don't have time for anything? Anyone else in here feel stressed out? Okay, cool. So we don't know what we're doing with our lives, and we're all stressed out. Great, let's just have a big yell fest and sit around the ice cream, right? That's sometimes what I'd like to do. But when you say, I don't have time, I'm going to prove to you that you do have time. Everybody get out your phones. I want you to get out your phone if you brought it. If you didn't, power to you, sister. You have way more discipline than I do. But if you brought your phone, and if you have an iPhone, I want you to go into the battery. Go into settings, go to your general settings, and then I want you to hit battery. And I want you to hit percentage. You can look at your usage. And it will show you how much time you're spending on every app. If you have an iPhone. I don't know how to do Android, so if you guys know how to do that. Or if you have the new iPhone update, it will literally tell you every Sunday how many hours you have spent on having different applications open on your phone. Is that, can anyone see it? Did anybody find what I'm talking about? Then what did you discover? Instagram, Snapchat, and maybe email if you're kind of responsible, right? If one of your top apps is the Bible app, let's just give her a round of applause right now. But if you're being honest, it's probably these things that are kind of distractions, or maybe they seem noble, maybe it is your email, or homework, or something, good, but is it really your destiny? Is it really something that's informing what you want to be in 10 years? I want you to think, what's your name? Alex, right? Allie. Allie right now is sitting here in a yellow sweatshirt, watching a weirdo give a talk. What's Allie going to be doing in 10 years? Will future Allie like what current Allie is deciding to do with every spare minute of her time? Will that support her God-given destiny? I don't know. Only Allie can answer that. But I want you to put yourself into that narrative. I want you to look at what's on your phone. I want you to look where your time is being spent. Because if you think you don't have time to steward and to try and to get outside of your comfort zone, you are believing a lie, sister. Because I didn't have that much time, but I did have 10 minutes before bed to, instead of scrolling on something or watching mindless television, to Google, how do you start an Etsy store? What are packing peanuts? I didn't know. Like, I took time to learn those little steps. How to write a talk. Right? These one little step along the way, how to digitize something. It's not, you gotta conquer the mountain. You gotta have this grand plan. It's start with one thing. And replace 10 minutes of your scrolling time or your distraction time or your leisure time with productive, intentional time. So the solution to this distraction problem, I have two. First one is equip yourself with a list. Here's what I mean. When I go to the grocery store, there are like 15 million apple varieties, right? And 1,000 different options. And I will very quickly be overwhelmed with options and probably distracted by the cookie aisle if I don't have a list to guide what I'm going to get, right? And I know that's true because I went to the dentist this summer and the lady's like, oh honey, you have 5 cavities. I'm like, I brush my teeth every single day, multiple times a day, and I'm a flossing freak. I have a what? And she goes, you have 5 cavities. And I'm like, how is this possible? And I realized all that summer we had been moving into a new house and I had just been very willy-nilly at the grocery store. And I had thrown a lot of cookies in my cart, okay? And I realized this is not just distraction. If y'all ever get my book, you're going to read this in my book. It is evidence of the damage distraction causes. One trip down the cookie aisle, not a big deal. 5, 6. And so what happened is I realized, when I go into the store and I have a list that I prepared ahead of time before Little Debbie cakes start waving at me, I'm much less likely to put those in my cart. In the same way, if you have a list that will guide the way that you're going to live your life every single day, and what you're going to weigh your daily mini decisions against, your micro decisions, you're much less likely to fill up your cart or your time with things that don't actually serve you well, but might actually damage your destiny. So I want you to think of what would I put on my list. Here's what I do. I think of my life in big picture. They say to have micro goals, they say to have attainable goals. I want you to do those things. But I want you to think of a couple of guiding directives for your life. For me, at least in this season, when I think of who did God make me to be, and what am I ultimately made to do, and what responsibilities I've been given that are, I believe, in my destiny. And then I made some directives based off that. I said, be present for your marriage. Lead your team well and work smart. You can be strategic, sister, right? And the third one was know God and make him known. So 3 big guiding principles for my life. So then what I start to do is when I feel myself getting distracted or feeling overwhelmed or taking on all these things, I'm going, what of these support and align with these 3 big guiding principles for my life? And if it's scrolling social media for 3 hours, probably doesn't really align. So think of the 3 guiding principles for this season and where you want to be in the next couple of years. And then I want you to weigh your tiny daily decisions against those. Equip yourself with the list. Second thing, have you ever heard of the 10-10-10 analysis? Do you know what that is? Some people are nodding their heads, some are like, what you talking about? The 10-10-10 analysis is a way to make smarter decisions in the moment. So let's say you have a full class schedule, you're completely overwhelmed, you're really wanting to try this new thing, or you want to create some room in your schedule to spend more time with your friends, or whatever the thing is that you feel like you need to steward better, but you're not. And you're saying, I don't have time, and then Sally Sue comes up to you, and she's like, hey, do you think you could lead this student body project and head up this event? I think you'd be really good at it. You ever had that happen? Or hey, you want to join this extracurricular, intramural team with the dorm club, whatever the thing is. And in the moment, what do you want to do? You want to say, yeah, because you don't want to see the disappointment on this person's face, right? Or on your mom's face, or on your teacher's face. I think you should really do this. And you're like, okay, yeah, sure, I'd love to. So you have to think in 10-10-10. How am I going to feel about this in 10 minutes? How am I going to feel about this in 10 weeks? And how am I going to feel about this in 10 years? So in 10 minutes, you're probably going to feel pretty good about it. that lady or that person that asked you to take on this commitment is probably happy and you feel like, great, I just made them happy, but what about in 10 weeks? When she's not like clapping anymore and it's really hard and it's actually not really in line with your gifting, but it's just something that you know you did out of obligation. How are you gonna feel about that? Are you gonna be kicking yourself? And then think 10 years. In 10 years, does this commitment today support who I really want to be, who I'm called to be, where I'm headed, or is it a distraction? Sometimes it's hard to tell. You know, in the moment I thought the shop might have been a distraction. But the way I was able to tell, is this a distraction or is this something that could lead to imperfect action, was because I said, does it give me life? I'd ask myself, does it give me life? And as I sat there with my friends and we talked about life and we were packaging boxes and encouraging one another, I said, this may not be the most perfect thing. It's pretty makeshift, but it does give me life. So in 10 years, I'll probably be glad I did it, even if it only lasts 6 months. But if you're doing something that doesn't give you life, it's a distraction, sister. Dare you cut it out. Fourth reason is expectations. I think we women can put ourselves and each other in boxes. Here's what I mean. Oh, that's the math girl. That's the photographer girl. That's the church girl. That's the mean girl. That's the speaker girl. We put these labels on each other. Would you agree? Have you ever felt like you're in a box? Like, oh, I'm seen as this. I'm only seen as this, and I have to live into that, even if I have a curiosity to try that. Or maybe I'm not only what everyone says I am. And so I remember when I was feeling this way was because I had this shop going for a while, and some of y'all have these sweatshirts, but the shop was called Soul Scripts because it was literally just like words from my soul, okay? And what started to happen is Soul Scripts became everything. It was just like it became like my identity. It became what everyone knew me as. I would be like walking somewhere and people would go, are you Soul Scripts? And I was like, no, hi, I'm Jordan, nice to meet you. But that was what I started to be perceived as, like, oh, this is all you do. This is your entire thing because it's attached to you. Have you ever felt like that? So, you know what I did? This is so dumb, but I'm gonna tell you, this is all about micro steps. Living into your destiny isn't climbing a mountain in a night, in a day. Living into your destiny is taking micro steps and saying, you know what, I need to remove this expectation or this perceived expectation or this label that's been put on me so that I can really start growing. So this sounds really dumb, but you know what I did? I so bravely changed my Instagram handle. I know, ridiculous, right? It's so small. But the reason that matters is because that was the space that people would see, and I felt like, you know what, there's other things. I want to write, I want to try and bring something new into this. I want to offer coaching, or I'm speaking, Soul Scripts isn't speaking, I'm speaking. So I had to start going, where's the line? And the only person that can get you out of the box is you. The only person who can get you out from behind the labels that you have either allowed to be stuck on you or that you've stuck on yourself, positive or negative or neutral, is you. So the solution to this issue I think we have as women to live into these perceived expectations is not to keep living into them, but to start picturing our life differently. Stop looking at your life as a box, as this like categorized thing, and start looking at it as a path that you get to walk on. Those are two very different shapes, would you agree? The only person who opens the door in this tiny little box is you, so I'm putting some responsibility on you, sister. I want you to take responsibility for your insecurities. I want you to take responsibility for the way that you've allowed other expectations, other people's expectations to be put on you. You get to decide how much weight those carry. The only person whose opinion matters is God's and how you walk in that. You have to make action. You have to take action and imperfect, intentional steps. You have to reset the expectation by setting your intention. Where are you headed? Where are you going? You got to stop looking at it as a box. You got to start looking at it as a path. One small incremental shift at a time. Change the Instagram handle or try this one little thing. Just little adjustments. It sounds silly. It sounds so dumb. That's why I share it with you, because I think we overlook those micro changes. Those seemingly insignificant changes. Last reason. Last reason we don't allow ourselves to really thrive, to really step outside the box, to get outside of our comfort zone, to stop living to expectations, is because I think at our core we have a messed up definition of success and we're actually afraid of it. Here's what I mean. What do you think of when you think of success? Do you think of it like this big thing? Doesn't it kind of sound like a big weighty thing? Like success, okay, that's such a word. And I think sometimes we can be afraid of it because I feel like, oh my gosh, if I had success and whatever my thought, whatever that would be, I think I would drop it and I would break it. You ever felt like that? Like, I don't know what I would do with that. I don't think I could handle that. That's not for me, that's for that girl. And I think this word success has been very warped in our culture. I think it's been warped even in our churches. Because it's so much about I think in like our Instagram church society, it can be so big and seen and all of this stuff. And I think, you know, like, okay, for example, when I was doing this shop in college, I had full plans to quit all of it at the end of my senior year because I said, I gotta go get a real job now. Because I thought if it's something that I enjoy, it can't possibly be what I do with my life. Work is supposed to be miserable, right? And so I had this idea that I gotta go be successful, I've gotta go have this title, I've gotta be a manager, I've gotta be, and I hope you do if that's what you're called to do, but I had this perception that I have this thing and I've gotta stop it because it doesn't really make a lot of sense, it's kind of makeshift, I'm answering emails from biology, right? But I got to this place where I said, maybe I need to start looking at success differently. We often look at it as this big, huge thing, but what if you changed the way that you look at it? What if it was simply, I'm going to be done working and present with the people in my life, whether that's my husband or my best friend or whatever, by 8 p.m. every night? What if that was your micro success of the day? Do you know what that means? That means that every single day you'd be successful before you figured your life out. Before you got your degree, before you had that dream come true, before you got that internship, before you did fill in the blank, before you met your Boaz, before you met your guy, right? We have these like pre-qualifications to think once I hit that milestone and get that thing and do this and do that, I'll be successful or I'll be succeeding at life. But you know what? The solution to this is that you simply need to redefine success. Because if I could go back to that 19-year-old girl sitting there, no, 20-year-old probably, sitting there packaging mugs with the weirdest packing peanuts that smell funny and over Chipotle bowls with my friends. You know what I would say to her? I'd say, sister, I know that you feel like this doesn't make sense. I know that you feel a little silly. I know that you like it, but that you don't really know where it's going to go. But you know what? You are successful because you are trying. Because you are getting up every day and showing up as your full self and making a way. You are disrupting the status quo. You're ticking off your house, Mom, because there's shipments of 100 mugs coming to the front door of AOPI. And it doesn't make sense, and you've got people giving you the side eye like, what are you really doing? Come on, go get a real job. But you're trying, and you're showing up, and you're saying, God, I know you gave me this gift. And I don't know what is going to come of it. I don't know that in 5 years I'm going to be going to speak to 300 girls at Cedarville University. I don't know that in 3.5, 4 years I'm going to sign a book deal. I'm going to do these things that make zero sense because I am not qualified to do it. But I trust that you don't call the qualified, you qualify the called. And so you know what, sister? You are successful. If you're showing up and you're trying, and you say, you know what, I'm going to get up every day, and I'm going to bring what I can to the table. I'm going to fail and fumble my way through this instead of avoiding trying at all because I don't want to fail. And I'm going to start building on my failures. I'm just going to show up and find out what packing peanuts are. I'm going to try the little things. You are successful before your dreams come true. You can be fulfilled and live a full life before that plan comes to pass. Before you have a packaged up answer for Aunt Beatrice, you gotta get that through your head because you know what, we live in a culture that will tell you, go after your dreams. Go after your dreams and be like, hello, I don't know what my dreams are. Or you might, and when you're so focused on this one thing, you miss these little micro opportunities along the way that might actually be the door to your destiny. The things that feel down are actually sometimes the door to our destiny. So here's my challenge to you. I'm going to wrap up because I'm probably boring you at this point. Just try stuff. Seriously, doodle on a page. Ask your roommates to help you. Give them Chipotle bowls. They'll love it. I'm telling you. No, I mean, really, it takes courage to step out and be curious. It takes courage to go through the trench and not over it. Focused ambition is not something to be ashamed of. You don't have to make yourself small, and you don't have to dim your light. Have you ever heard the Marianne Williamson quote? It says, I'm going to read this to you. It says, our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. Your playing small, fearful, avoiding embarrassment, that doesn't serve anybody, sister. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people will not feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. And when it says when we let our own light shine, we subconsciously give others permission to do the same. I want you to go home, and I want you to Google the quote by Marianne Williamson, Light Shine, and I want you to print it out, and I want you to stick it on your mirror. Because you need to be given permission every single day to fumble through your passions so that you can walk in your God-given purpose. That's where it starts. That is where it starts. I want you to be prepared to be misunderstood and to embarrass yourself far more times than you figure it out. But guess what? Guess what? The very things that we are most afraid of, those are the things that reveal what we're made of. Those are the things that will show you you can actually do this. He does have a plan for your life. You can fumble and fail your way through and still be successful because you are getting up and trying. You are getting up and trying because embarrassment is actually empowerment and intentional. This is what I want you to also write down. Intentional, implementable, imperfect action. Intentional, implementable, imperfect action. That is what leads to massive impact. One little incremental action step at a time. One little intentional step. One little imperfect action that you'll probably feel your way through 10 times. That's what leads to massive impact. Take incremental, implementable, imperfect action. That's what's going to lead you toward your destiny. I want you to step out of the box that you think you're supposed to live in. I want you to think a little bit outside that box. I want you to let yourself be seen. I want you to let yourself build on your failures. And I want you to remember that you're a kid. And that you're a human. You don't have to have it all figured out, my friend. You're a kid. You know what kids do? They play. And I don't care if you're 14 or 84. You're a kid. And you are given the ability to have childlike faith, so I give you permission to play, to experiment and explore before you have a perfect plan to execute. That's when you're going to find your destiny. Thanks, guys.